Welcome to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. 10 teams from Connecticut to South Carolina, and some of the best girls high school rugby in the States. Listen in for game recaps, stories, interviews, and more from in and around the league. Episodes from the Garage is made possible with support of Basecamp 31, a New Jersey nonprofit that brings individuals and businesses together to invest in healthy community and personal development through shared human experience. Now, Episode 1. Welcome, boys.
Howdy.
Morning.
Hello.
It's afternoon already. Yeah.
Afternoon. Well, so here we are, the inaugural episode of our podcast coming from the garage. And why don't we go around the table and introduce our guests, and then we'll tell you about our camera crew.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Ahern, and I am here to assist in any way I can.
I'm Bill Dobbs. I'm just here hanging out.
Steph Aliprandi, I'll be your commentator for the day.
Mike Eisenhart, unofficial voice of the e-GRL.
And behind the cameras, Production O'Brien.
That's a good call. It's excellent.
So, kicking it off, we're here to kind of talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. So, I'm really going to turn it over to Mike. I'll frame up the question first, and then guys add in as we come through. And Chris from behind the camera, be sure to jump over on the mic if something to add. So here we are. I think you heard it in the introduction. Year really 3 since inception, year 2 going live, and have already doubled the teams. And the interest level is, for a short 3 years at an all-time high, with other developments coming in with potentially a developmental feeder league for this. And it's just amazing where we've gotten in such a short period of time. So, Mike, I'd like to kind of, after framing it up that way, kind of tell us how this started and how we got to where we are year 3.
Yeah. Well, today is a perfect example of how we sort of got started. Most things in our little crew seem to happen this way, right? It's a conversation between people. Somebody throws out something, a problem, and other people kind of chime in with a potential solution. So that's kind of how it started. I mean, we're in the thick of COVID, right? So put yourself there. We're in the thick of COVID. We've got this girls' high school rugby team with a lot of potential and talent. And we're sort of faced with this concept that they're going to be sitting on the sidelines doing nothing for a year. And, to Dobbs' credit, that wasn't satisfactory. So it became kind of banter over text and over conversation of how can we make something out of nothing, and get a few games, but keep these kids engaged and all that other stuff that kind of goes with trying to get, through a first-time thing known as a pandemic. So we start with this conversation of, hey, let's do a showcase event. Let's bring all the colleges around. Nobody's hosting tournaments this year. Let's figure out how to do it. We gave ourselves all of 6 weeks to go from...
I fought you tooth and nail on that.
Well, it's true. It is true. So the voice... I'm going to call it the voice of reason.
No, it's not the voice of reason. It was pester, pester, pester. Okay, I'll back off for a day. Pester, pester, pester. Finally, I just had enough and go, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm in. Okay. Well, I'm so glad you saw it. That's all you need to say.
I think the term was they badgered me into it.
Yes. I just got done fighting. I couldn't fight anymore.
Chinese water torture.
So the white flag goes up. Anyway, so there we are. Chapter 2. The white flag goes up. We decided to host this event. We called it Mid-Atlantic Women's Rugby Showcase, or MARS for short. Had a really great day, a good showing. Lots of colleges showed up. Some teams showed up, a handful of teams. And as these things do, we debriefed afterward, had a really good conversation about, hey, where do we go from here? And the conversation quickly became that group of core teams, we should be doing something.
Let's not breeze over that 6 weeks component, though, and hats off to you and Brian and Chris, because that came together in a very, very short period of time. And frankly, I think the production value that was there, the way that it came off, was really impressive. And I mean, we heard it from college coaches. Bill Leclerc from Army said, I only see one problem next year. You don't have a big enough parking lot. Kudos to you guys, because that was done within the span of a month and a half, and you've got one of the premier coaches in women's collegiate rugby giving you an attaboy like that. Just wanted to drop that in there, and then let's take it from there.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, it really did. It went off without a hitch.
And almost.
We had...
And the dog bite.
Yeah, we did. We had some obstacles to get over. Everything turned out okay. Do we sidebar on that story? I mean, where do we want to go?
And Kathy was championship about it too, so God rest her soul.
She was. I mean, I do think it's worth just pausing because she's an icon in the sport.
100%.
I mean, at the women's game. So again, if you weren't there, you may not know this story. Any of us that were there, it was intense, right? So Kathy Flores, the late great coach from Brown and amongst other places, Hall of Famer on the women's side, maybe one of the preeminent women's rugby athletes in the United States ever.
4 World Cups, like the list goes on.
I mean, you could make the argument that top 3 rugby players on the women's side, ever.
100%.
Yeah, from the U.S. So okay, so she's there, and being a kind soul, decides to say hello to a dog. The dog wasn't quite ready. It was a hot day. You know how it goes with dogs. Hot day. The dog bit her, and we were kind of like at this weird break in the day, and
weren't we at halftime in our game?
Is that it? Was it
just at halftime of our game? Against Aspetuck,
It was against Aspetuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
See that to me that's a complete blur. Like I don't even remember the context of it.
Yeah.
I just remember.
Well, you were in full panic mode at that point.
Well, that's
anyway.
true. That's true. I just remember looking up, and so my sister, who was there as a physio on the side, so she was acting kind of physio for the day. A nice gift on her part to us, was there, and my brother, who I work with, was there watching. And I remember her like calling out, and Jan, I think, was it Jan Monroe? Somebody ran onto the field and said like trainer, and of course that perks my ears up just because professionally I'm used to listening for that. And all of a sudden I see her kind of look at me, and I'm like, oh shit, like first, that's one. I just put a 50-cent piece in the swear jar. So oh darn, and so then I ran. And I ran out there, and Kathy was sitting there, and her arm was pretty troubled.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a pretty, and so I asked her, I said, hey, is it okay for me to apply pressure? Because you always want to ask, you never know the situation. I didn't have any gloves on. I remember that, but it was like in the moment, who cares? And so I just grabbed her wrist and applied. She said yes. I grabbed her wrist, I applied pressure, and then Amy came out, and we started like, sort of like doing the
triaging.
Yeah, like how are we going to take care of this? The tricky part is looking back now, sort of everyone knows the history. Kathy was sick at that point, and it was hot. So she's sitting in the sun, and she's starting to get pale, and we're like, hey, we got to move on this, right?
Yeah.
And then the beauty of it is, I think that story actually is that shows the culture of the sport. Because what happened next? 4 people on the side of a tent. They're pulling the tent out, putting it over. Everybody, the whole action stops to take care of this person, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And long story short, she got to the local hospital, got stitched up, and I will never forget the subsequent phone call. So I'll put my proud dad hat on for a second. She calls up and she goes, hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking care of me, and I was like, yeah, no problem. We of course would do that for anybody. And then like, without missing a beat, goes, and I'd like to set up a time to talk to your daughter. I think she had a great weekend. And I was like,
total champ.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Anyway, so that's
how do you get your daughter in college? Have a dog bite one of the coaches and help them.
Make sure it's Division I.
Exactly.
But I think it's also kind of testament to the club and the organization. It's like we're very lucky to have trained personnel and first responders be part of this club and be active because, we've had other situations like this. One in a life-saving situation where, thankful we know the people that we know, right?
Heck yeah.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, great point. So I digress, but...
And funny story to add to that, I emailed her just to see how she was doing, follow up and everything, and she was out on a recruiting trip somewhere out west, herself and Christine, her assistant coach, and she sent me a picture of this big giant statue of a dog, and she's got her whole body in it, and it's doing
So you mean like weeks after the event?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and with something like that happening, you're always a little bit worried about what the ramifications might be. Does it reflect poorly on what you're trying to do? And but she was a great sport, and she was very supportive of everything we were doing. So
100%,
nice.
100%.
Totally.
So let's bring it back to the EGRL coming off the first Mars tournament, and then how we kind of moved into that second phase of the league.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that on that, the context really is, so here we are, we're left with this team who's succeeding, right? So you've got this solid team, tons of upward potential. And we run into our this sort of tricky spot of there's no competition for us locally. Now, we've played some of these other teams, the North Bays, of the world. Like, those are teams who have kind of perennially put out a good
Quality
product.
sides,
and,
yeah.
So here we are debriefing Mars and saying, we should turn this into a regular thing. How do we turn this concept into a regular thing, and all the while still deal with the fact that we're going to have to travel long distances.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there is no other New Jersey team, and even if there was, like, they just wouldn't have the level
capabilities
of play.
yet. Yeah.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest with this, wasn't like a one-off idea. This has been kicked around for a number of years. I think they used to do a tournament every year at one of the home fields where all the teams would come for one weekend and play.
Yep.
But it was never really talked about as a league. It was talked about as playing each other a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's where the league idea came from. And I'm jumping ahead, but this has been kicked around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it was a kind of a culmination of a little bit of frustration around the high school girls game in the tri-state area and mid-Atlantic that, we all, outside of probably Pennsylvania, who has a pretty established league for women's high school, we've all had to travel. And, the conversation, I think, got around, and it was like, and no offense to any of the state-based organizations, it's just been a tough slog. And we figured that the easiest way to get it going was to formalize the travel that we were doing, and so when you're playing in Pennsylvania, you unfortunately can't compete for the cup at the end of the year. So you could have the best record, but you're out. So it's a little bit of a letdown for the for the team,
Sure.
For the girls, and so I, if I'm not mistaken, that was a bit of the catalyst as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so we run into this situation where kids want to compete. They're playing at a high level. And I think what we found pretty quickly was that was not unique to us. There were other teams who are in that same boat in their states, right? So you had these teams who are kind of like, hey, we're going to go anywhere, find anyone, play anyone, and try to really do something. And it's just that we were maybe the first movers on that. So So we throw it out to that kind of core group of teams, right? So at this point, it was play rugby. It's us.
There's that dog bark.
It's us. It's perfect. Hey, this is the real deal. So it's us. It's play rugby. It's North Bay. It's West Carroll. It's Aspetuck. It's Doylestown.
Yeah.
Right. So those are kind of the teams that have been saying, hey, like, I want to do this.
A little bit of Downingtown in there from time to time.
Like Downingtown was in the conversation for sure.
Yeah.
So then we throw it out and we say, hey, do you guys want to formalize this league? And I think that, in fairness, we did it in a way that ensured success. We went to the folks who were maybe the most on board first and said, hey, what do you think? And then when they gave their affirmative, others sort of jumped on. And so that's what it became. Now, it turned out that Play Rugby they didn't feel comfortable, to their credit, they didn't feel comfortable fielding a full side. And so they said, you better put us on kind of like a provisional status. We won't compete in the first year. We want to be in the mix in the conversation. But everybody else said, yeah, we're going to put we're going to field side, put a team out there. And that was it. I mean, we started an e-board, got some, rules and bylaws and laws set up, and took it from there.
I mean, yeah, and this is in the span of probably 18 months. I would say, call it 24 to 18 months, which is pretty amazing.
I think that's what really helped push our league to grow was, all the teams saying we're sick of showing up to our games and we have to play 10s or 7s, and we're playing our own players.
Yep.
We're giving the other team our players.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what pushed that first year for this to happen.
Yeah.
I really do. And then when we go into the tournaments in Charlotte, basically in all the other teams that we were playing, when they found out about this league and they really didn't know what to think about it, but I know all the coaches said, we want to talk to you about this in a few months.
Yep.
I guess they wanted to see the direction it went. Then they were contacting us, which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
So, but all those teams were going through the same thing. I know the Cardinals played Raleigh, or the Cardinals played the Wahinis, or vice versa. They played 15s. I don't know who else they play, but a lot of times they were showing up and they were playing 7s or 10s during 15 season. So it's a good thing for us and for all the teams involved, because we get to grow the game at 15s, but the other teams, they can do their thing and grow in their teams, playing 7s and 10s, but we get to compete at 15s.
Yeah.
Until they're ready, then they can come up and play 15s.
Fast forward a few months last year, we wind up at Florida Invitational, and that was our shot to play Carolina, right? So that was it. Like that was we didn't get them at Ruggerfest, so now most of the season goes by. We go back down south, in this case Florida, because we knew they were going to be there. Well, we thought they were going to be there. They were there the year before, so it was a good guess. So they are there. We wind up playing them in the first game, and it was another great game.
Great game.
Battle,
Back and forth. Yeah.
100% up till the final whistle, literally the final whistle, right? I think that's what did it, to be honest. That's what did the growth, I think, this year, because it went our way, which is nice, and that 100% we can recount that game 1,000 times. It was exciting to be part of it. But the more important thing is they were super gracious in the loss, and then wanted to know, hey, how do we play you guys more frequently? We need games like this. Our program and to me that is the clear voice of a championship elite mindset, right? Of we got beat. We're not going to dodge you in the future. We're not going to say, "Oh, you got us. Yeah, it was great." Like, hey,
Yeah, we want a rematch.
Right. Their first question was, "How do we play you again?" And it was like, "Well, we'll chat with you somewhere in the line." And so when we sent her an email, we sent the coaches their emails. And basically said hey, we're thinking about expanding this league. It went well enough last year that we're going to grow it. You're the first team we thought of. And pretty much the response was yeah. And by the way, these other two teams down by us can play at this level too. We had played both of them, right? Because we played Raleigh twice.
Yeah, we played Raleigh in Carolina, then again in Florida. Different team in each tournament.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
right.
Yeah, we played them in Ruggerfest. So they were a great example of they weren't quite there yet initially, and then we played them again a couple months later, and they gave us a run. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Very physical game.
Yeah, it was another physical good game.
yeah, they've got some athletes. I'm expecting big things from them this year because I think most of those athletes are back.
I think it's an interesting thing, right? What we're talking about here in the development of elite. And I heard Tom Fury say this a number of years ago. And most of you listening know Tom Fury.
Tess Fury's father, right?
Tess Fury's dad. That's right. And, he said something over a beer one time. He's like, youth rugby is fragile. And the girls' game all the more so. And anecdotally, when my daughter started playing for the high school team, there were three other teams in New Jersey with a very robust play rugby side. By the time she graduated and went to college, there was one team left standing. And I think, timing is kind of everything. And then it's the dedication of volunteers. And we were lucky to cross paths with a Carolina who had that same, call it quote unquote elite mindset, and said, how do we get more of this? Because as this gets better, the game gets better, we get the numbers. And I think we benefited from a few things, and dialing it back to the COVID piece, to your point, Bill, when we were really the only outlet there to get out of the bloody house for these kids, and you saw the numbers grow. And I would say we probably crossed 50 to 60 athletes across that field, and it dials back to kind of that component of either you love it or you hate it. And we ended up with a solid 40, But I think those two things, or three things, call it time and pressure, dedication, and the desire to grow this game to a different level, i.e. the elite level, came together like the planets aligned for us during that time period. But if it weren't for the dedication of all the guys sitting around this table and the other moms and dads who are out there giving of their time, we wouldn't be where we are in year 3 of this exceptional league. And let's take it right from here as the league starts to grow.
Yeah.
We're year 2 of this league, right?
Yeah.
Year 2 of the league, 3 of the effort.
Of
Yeah.
Mars.
Let's call
This
it.
will be year 3 of Mars.
Yeah. Well, you call it the inception, the
Okay.
concept coming to life, because it takes a little bit of time to get that first,
Never underestimate the power of a group of sappy fathers. Let's be really honest.
I'm so happy you worked that in.
Sappy dads can move mountains for their daughters.
That's 100%.
Eventually there'll be a sappydads.com. We don't know what it will entail, but
Dad bods.
It's beautiful.
Okay, we digress. Let's kind of move into what's happened in the last 6 months, and this is a great opportunity to kind of, there are teams who are understanding that the level of play that they are potentially engaging in, and you alluded to it with play rugby, saying, look, we're just not ready right now. And then other teams who are chomping at the bit, like Carolina, and like how did that kind of evolve?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I think you've got a little bit of a philosophical moment there, right? Like we know the game, like this whole idea of grow the game, grow the numbers. We all hear it. We all have been part of it. You know, anybody who's been around the sport for a while, especially in the States, understands that we need more people experiencing this game. It's an amazing game. Everyone should try it. Everyone should experience it. Okay. The philosophical divide comes in with the which is better. Lower the barriers to entry, make it easier to get in, or raise the ceiling, right? Like that's a little bit of a philosophical divide. So the tricky part is that you need both. At the end of the day, you need both. You need every athlete who can throw a ball and run and have fun to try this, because it's going to click for some. They're going to be like, this is the most amazing thing ever, and I want to do it, and I want to do it with my friends. Okay. On the other side, you've got to have that standard. You've got to have that like bar
aspiration
to get over. Yeah, man. Like you just set a new bar. You just set a new standard. Like you got to get over that bar. And let's be honest, what pushes performance better than someone next to you who raised the bar a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you just jumped that? Fine. Okay. Now, whatever. I'm going to develop the Fosbury flop, man. Like, I'm going over backwards, you know? Like, whatever. That's how innovation in everything happens, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, bottom line is that the Carolinas of the world come back and say, great, I want to do this with you. Okay. Then you have this humility that also I think is still alive in the sport. You know, and I won't divert too far, but it's sad to me to see that this is rarer and rarer, more rare than not anymore. But the play rugbies who come back and say, we're not there yet, right? Most powerful word in the English language, yet. We're not there yet, but we want to be involved because we see where this could go. And that's really where it's gone, right? And so now this year we've pulled in Downingtown, another kind of perennially tough side with athletes that have been playing at the highest level.
Yeah.
What's that?
Vienna also.
Vienna, who's for what it's worth, I did not realize Vienna was as young a program as they are. I think they're 2018. They had to kind of like on the girls' side.
Yeah.
The boys' side been around for a while.
I think they, if I'm not mistaken, were an offshoot of Maryland Exiles, like when that kind of unfortunately fell apart, you know.
Yeah.
Players had to go somewhere, and thanks to those parents down there as well, parent coaches. And
yeah, the guys in Maryland probably could tell us, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that team in Virginia is younger than I thought, because they are good, and they've been good. Like, you know, but I think they're only like 2018 or 2015, but definitely not older than that. And so they're on board, right? So that adds another Southern Division
pretty
team.
good product for 4 years.
Yeah. So now you've got 4 solid teams in the Southern Division, right? You've got the Wahinis, you've got the Red Hawks, you've got the Cardinals, and now you've got the other Cardinals, Vienna, who happen to be Cardinals, but let's not get too confused. All right. So those 4 in a Southern Division. Then we're able to take and bring Doylestown, you know, down into the Central Division. So now you've got North Bay, West Carroll, Doylestown. That's a tough division right there.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, those are 3 teams that put a good product on the field.
Yep.
And then you look north, and you've got us and Now Play Rugby, who we think is ready this year. Like they're ready. They've pretty much said, we're going to do it. We're in. Okay, you've got Aspetuck, who they are the scrappiest team around, always putting out tough kids.
Yeah, talking about punching above your weight.
Tough
right?
kids.
Yeah.
And again, another young program at the high school girls level.
Yeah.
You know, they're only been
Brand
around
new.
a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be more than 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've got us, Aspetuck, Play Rugby, and then you pull Downingtown up from the Philly area, and you start to look at that footprint, and you've got Connecticut, let's call us New York, New Jersey, like that kind of metro, New York metro. You've got Doylestown, not far from us across the river. You've got Play Rugby in New York. Then you go down and you've got that whole Maryland,
corridor,
you know, kind of DC. And you get even further and you've got now Raleigh, Charlotte, and South Carolina and Charleston. Like, that's a pretty good footprint for representing the top clubs in the East Coast.
I think it's telling you something, too. It's like we're not unique in our desire to build this game, right? It's like as the word starts to get out, like it's like, hey, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing. And it's like we like the way we like your style of play. We like where and here's something we should probably get into next is like we like where your girls are going after high school, you know, and the opportunities that this is creating, because it really is an exceptional story. And I think you know, again, dial it back to 36 months, 3 years. and the fact that it's a 10 league, a 10 team league, overnight for all intent and purpose. And these teams have the same. We seem to see these teams sending girls to the same schools that our girls are going to.
Yeah.
So like there's this, like-minded feel for development. And then let's further the conversation, right? But let's talk about where it's happening with the 2031 World Cup looming in the United States, right? And what that means to the growth of youth rugby and what we see here. So I'll just drop that mic right there.
I mean,
Might be a
jeez.
whole nother episode.
Jeez, where do you begin? Let's just allude to the fact that the World Cup coming to the States has the potential. I can't guarantee it will, but it has the potential to change everything for this sport in the biggest sports market in the world. I mean, like at the end of the day, youth sports in the United States, I mean, I don't know for sure, but there cannot be many markets rivaling the amount of money being spent on youth sports in the States. We're talking about mega billions. So now you bring the biggest single event in the game of 15s to the States for the both men and women's side. And it's like, man, if we don't, like, I almost want to say, like, okay, all right, everybody involved in U.S. rugby, like not USA rugby per se, but I hope you're listening to. If you screw this up, you have missed the best opportunity that the world could give you. Like, it is literally dropping an opportunity on your plate and saying, like, okay, like, go ahead, take a bite. Like, what do you want? Come on, man.
Yeah,
like,
you've got a decade to get your proverbial together.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Like,
let's
if
get
you
to
miss this one, like,
Exactly, and the kids we're coaching today are going to be the future of those teams, and they're going to be
100%.
the ones that are, hopefully getting us free tickets to those matches.
They better be.
Oh, the kids
Want
we're
something out of
coaching, the kids that our kids are playing against, all of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of kids. If you just go through the league now, and who knows what this is going to become next year. I know what I would like, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to make Mike's head spin on that one. And but the potential for the league and getting these kids on that team is incredible.
I mean, without diving too deep, the selects group, right? So just to give some context, we as a league were invited to put a team into a 3-team all-star match at the U18 level by USA Rugby, right? Like, so the USA Rugby Pathways group knows that exactly what you're saying. The current kids are going to become the future team when this moment happens. Okay. So they contacted us and basically said the same thing you said before. Like, I like your style. Would you be interested in putting a team together? So again, kind of grand, classic, like EGRL, Mars, RPS, style. We're going to, we will. Mm-hmm. We've got 6-8 weeks, no problem. Like, that's geez. Like, we got 8 weeks. That's a luxury. So we slapped this thing together, and although not perfect, it has not been perfect. The talent is impressive. I think that the talent, we've brought 40 kids together, okay, and we think very soon that's going to be whittled down to 25 who can travel, and we're going to see what they can do. But if the East Coast can represent and play tough, I think it says a lot about what this league is, how fast it came together, and really where it can go.
Yeah, it's exceptional that we are where we are right there. And hats off to the team at the table and the other guys from the league. If I miss some folks, my apologies. But out of North Bay, out of West Carroll, who will be hosting the next couple of events, I think, or the next coming event of this evaluation process. So I certainly myself am looking forward to see what this culminates into in the latter part of the first quarter. Well, guys, I think that's a wrap for today. I want to say I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to the next episode, guys. So from all of us to all of you, Happy New Year, and wish you the best in 2023, and go Eagles.
For those of you who like us, thank Mike and Steph. For those of you who don't, please email Brian.
Thank you for listening to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Elite Girls Rugby League and follow us on Instagram at Elite Girls Rugby. Special thanks to our producers, Team O'Brien, Bravo the Dog for a cameo contribution, and of course, our wives and daughters who entertain our crazy ideas and continue to associate with us respectively.